Hey guys, I'm Mike Curtin. This is the Brew World Order podcast, and today I'm with Chris Candiano of Dubco,
Thanks for
or
having me.
rather, Destination Unknown Beer Company in Bayshore, New York. Chris, how's it going?
All right, it's going great. Thanks for having me. I know we've been
Yeah,
going back
thank
and
you for
forth
being
trying to
on.
get this interview done, but glad we got to finally sit down and do it.
Yeah, it's happening, man. It's happening. The
Yep,
magic's happening. I appreciate it. So, could you give us a quick background? Where you grew up, what you did before the brewery, and then
sure.
how ultimately you wound up opening a brewery.
Yeah, so I guess the kind of boilerplate for my story is, I'm born and raised on Long Island in West Islip. Brewery's located in Bayshore, so we wanted to be close to the area we knew when we first opened a brewery. Um, my background is in construction. Um, you know, One of those family companies that I took over and ran for 20 something years. But
Gotcha.
where I kind of got into craft beer was my days in college. I went to SUNY Oswego, and back then there was a lot of Labatt drinking and Budweiser drinking, and me and my one buddy at the time were trying to seek out something a little bit more interesting. So we found like the senior bar in town, and they had craft beer, and like the late '90s and early 2000s, craft beer back then was Sierra
Sam
Nevada
Adams.
or Sam Adams, and a lot of imports. A lot of Belgian, German, and English beers. So that's kind of where I got my love and passion for craft beer per se, or just better beer than what most college kids were drinking. So
Right.
we kind of learned the ropes on a lot of Belgian styles and a lot of English styles. To this day, one of my favorite beers is Sam Smith's Tadcaster Porter. That's just a classic beer that I still love to this day, and that's kind of what drove me to seek out more interesting beers and then go down the rabbit hole of craft beer. Um, so that's kind of where I came from in the beer industry. That led to me, into trying to homebrew myself. I thought, hey, these are some cool styles.
Right.
I want to explore more. I've only found so much. Maybe I'll take a shot at making it. So that led me into homebrewing back in the early 2000s. Um, so yeah, that's kind of like where it came from, and where we started to go was the more I got into homebrewing. Um, Back then, there weren't many. There weren't podcasts. There weren't websites. There weren't Reddits about all this information. So I just started buying every book I could about like home brewing and brewing in general, and that was kind of my knowledge base for my brewing studies.
Right.
And then a few years after being a pretty avid home brewer, I ran into an old friend who I hadn't seen in a while, who after high school and college moved out to Arizona. And we literally just ran into each other at 7-Eleven one day. I was going to buy a beer, and he was going to buy a beer, and we kind of connected, and we're catching up on what we were both doing in life. And I said, "Yeah, I'm grabbing a 6-pack, and I'm going to brew some beer." He's like, "Oh, I'm into home brewing too." So that kind of led into the next step. When I reconnected with Brad, who founded Dubco with me, over reconnecting after not seeing each other for many years, and our love of craft beer and home brewing, and that hobby just snowballed out of control. I was like home brewing like once or twice a month, and then once or twice a week. So we were pretty into it at the time, and where he was in his situation, he was in his mid 20s and living with two younger brothers. So it was kind of like a frat house mentality, right? So everyone's kind of hanging out, drinking anyway.
Right.
So all the beer we were homebrewing was being drank right away by like all these guys that would just hang out at this kind of frat house. And the beer got better, and we brewed it more frequently. And the consensus was like, this stuff's pretty good. Maybe you guys want to like go a little further, in the craft beer thing. And it seemed like a crazy idea at the time, but where we were in our lives, we're like, yeah, you know what? Screw it. Let's take a shot at it. Back then there was maybe 10 breweries on Long Island, and no one was really
Right.
doing kind of the stuff that we were looking to do. So we said, screw it. We started looking for a location. We had very specific criteria on if we were to open a brewery, where would we want it to be? What do we want to make? What do we want the vibe to be? So we looked for almost 2 years before we found the location that Dubco and Bayshore is currently in. Um, we started small. We started too small. It was just the two of us and a couple grand each, covering rent and minimal equipment. And, it took off. And we soon found out that we were very, underprepared for what it actually is to run a brewery. We approached it as home brewers, brewing beer and selling it. And that is not the case. I do not recommend it. We get that question a lot. I'm a home brewer. I want to open a brewery. What should I do? Don't do it unless you have like an investor with $1 million and endless time and energy. It's one of those things that you learn
Yeah,
very early
especially now.
on. Like, man, this was a fun hobby. Now it is a serious business. So that's kind of
Right.
where that's what kind of where we came from, and yeah.
So, what would you say was one of those biggest learning processes when you first opened?
I would say definitely the biggest learning process is managing inventory. We started out with a small little tap room. We were lucky that right off the bat we had like a really solid following, and literally the day of our grand opening was the day of our grand closing. We opened and sold out everything we had made over the past 2 months,
Right.
and had to start all over again from the beginning and brew a bunch of new batches of beer and then try it again.
Right.
And then day two that we were open was also another day we sold out everything we made and had to close for another month. So we looked at it from more of a hobbyist standpoint than a legit business, and that was a quick lesson in how to not start a business. Is you definitely have to take it seriously and assume that you're gonna have a hit. We were very anxious and worried. Is anybody gonna come? Is anybody gonna like our beer? We already knew that, but those are kind of like, I guess, the nerves you have when you start a business or a company, right? And
Right.
we learned early on that this is not just something for fun anymore. This is a legit operation, and we have to
Right.
prepare and plan and learn that really quick.
So when you guys opened, you basically said that you had a couple of $1,000s and whatnot, but did you have to go find funding, and how did you go about doing that?
Yeah, so I mean, we found our location that we're in Bayshore, and we had enough between us to cover rent for a few months. It was a small build out. It was basically just cobbled together. Like I said, I was in construction, so I'm handy. I put everything together. Leftover material, some other jobs and stuff. So that was the easy part. Waiting for town approval. We had basically enough to cover to get us to opening. Um,
Right.
and we didn't really seek outside funding in the beginning. As we got closer, one of the other things that we obviously didn't realize, like, okay, we're opening a bar. To open a bar, you need a tap system. The tap system at the time I think was about $10,000, which we didn't have. So we did a Kickstarter to kind of raise some more money to finish the build out and get that tap system installed and some other last minute things we needed to open. So
Right.
we did that in like the winter of around 2015, and we were fortunate enough to raise about $25,000. To kind of give us that last minute push
Yeah.
to
Right.
get all these things done to open. You know.
It's awesome.
So it was great, and another stressful situation doing a Kickstarter. Like are we going to raise enough to get us to that finish line so we can actually open? You know.
Yeah, for sure. And luckily, I mean, I said in the beginning when you were homebrewing, there wasn't that, you know, a lot of internet and,
Now,
Reddit and all that stuff. But as time went on, I'm sure the internet coming to play helped
yeah,
immensely. You know,
I mean, a lot of people also ask us, were we part of a homebrew club? And
right?
when I started homebrewing, I wasn't even aware it was such a thing as homebrew clubs. I wish I had known about that.
Yeah,
We're involved with a lot of local homebrew clubs today. We do fundraisers with them. We do events with them, and it's such a great community because you have all these like-minded people, doing their own thing, but then coming together, at these, they do fun, brew events, they do fun meetings where you can bounce ideas off of someone who's more seasoned, than maybe you were when you started, or you run into some weird issue that someone's like, oh yeah, I know exactly what's going on. Try this. I really wish we had that kind of resource when we
for
first
sure.
started. Um, so it's between homebrew clubs, and I know there's a lot of tasting clubs and stuff these days, and literally you could find anything on the internet, in 2022.
For sure. Yeah,
So
yeah,
yeah, it was kind of one of those grassroots things where if you were running into some weird thing during fermentation, you'd have to scour piles of books and try and figure it out. Where like today you can
right.
pretty
The
much
guy who brings
Google.
the
You can
beer.
pretty much
Yeah,
type in Google and you'll get an answer in
yeah.
3 seconds. But it's it's a completely different world, in brewing and homebrewing these days. But I think for
I
the
think one of
better.
the coolest things about homebrew clubs is basically at some point you're going to be, meeting up with guys, meeting up with these people that you're homebrewing with, and then one day that's going to be the next brewery down the street from you.
Absolutely, and
You
then
know,
that's also what I was like, alluding to the fact that there's so many more resources out there today. When someone does decide to take the leap to become a professional brewer, they're ahead of the curve already, and as one of almost 50 breweries on Long Island right now, I hope, I think everybody has a place and everyone has their own kind of avenue for where they want to be in the brewing industry. But when someone opens up a new brewery, the beer is already pretty good. When we first
yeah,
opened
right,
up, the beer was okay. Some of it was just okay. Some of it was better than others. Guys are coming out, opening breweries, and the beer is already really good. Which is better for the industry.
for sure.
I want the industry as a whole to do well. If we have a customer that's just getting into craft beer and they had their first brewery experience, it should be positive.
Of course.
I want that new craft beer generation to have a positive experience at their
Yeah.
wherever they're going.
I say that all the time with my buddy that, like, you go into a place and it's, sometimes you got to dump a beer because it could be that person's first time coming to that brewery. And if they taste that beer and be like, this place, no good.
Yeah, I mean, maybe someone will remember a couple great beers they had, but they're definitely going to remember a bad beer they had.
Of course. Yeah, that's true.
So
Um,
I think that's great for the industry is all the resources available, and between what's available on the internet and what's available at these homebrew clubs, it's really pushing the industry.
for sure. Uh, and what's something when getting into, opening a brewery, what's something you never thought you were going to have to deal with?
The amount, basically the amount of money it takes to run this place, it's astronomical.
Yeah,
Coming from a background where I had my own construction company and I had maybe 2 or 3 employees at a time. Like that weekly payroll number from 1 or 2 employees to now we have 7 full-time staff in Bayshore and another about 10 part-time. And we have our second location that's open, and there's another
Right.
2
In
full-time
Warwick.
staff and
Right.
another 5 or 6 part-time. Just basically the amount of money it takes to keep the lights on
Yeah.
is astronomical.
Yeah, and if you find good help, you want to keep them. It's from
Yeah, absolutely,
it's
and
hard. It's hard to find good help nowadays for sure.
it is, and
Trustworthy people.
there are still labor shortages, and we could probably use a couple more sets of hands, but um, I think we do right by our employees. We take care of them. They're our front line. They're the face of the company at the end of the day. And it starts from at the top all the way to the bottom. From brewing to packaging to pouring that beer to get that in that customer's hands. It goes through a lot of time and a lot of people. And you want to make sure that those are competent, well trained, and well compensated employees. So I
Right.
think that was back when I started, I would never think that this fun little hobby turned business would be kind of what it is today. You know,
Right.
almost 30
Turning
people
into a
on
family.
payroll, and we're still growing.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, and what are some qualities that you possess that make you a good business owner?
I like to think that I'm like quick on my feet in terms of problem solving. Um, you know, an environment like a brewery is literally and figuratively a lot of moving parts, and there's an issue or a problem or something broken every single day. And I think that that's where I excel is I could just think and act quickly on my feet, adjust adjust to basically what the brewery throws at me every day. That's
Yeah. Right.
probably the most integral part of owning a brewery is you can plan as much as you want. You have everything set up what you think is going to go, the way it's going to go, and there's always a wrench thrown in the spokes, literally every day.
Yeah.
So
From what I'm hearing is, you basically got to be a jack of all trades. Being able to do plumbing, a little construction, a little this and all.
yeah, yeah.
And
I mean, my background kind of lends to that aspect of like
right.
just being handy in general, but literally being able to jump into a situation and make decisions and act on them quickly is probably the most important part of this business.
Gotcha. And if you had to redo one thing since opening your brewery, what would it be?
Well, that's kind of like a double-sided question for me because, as I alluded to earlier, when we first started the business, we were definitely not prepared and definitely
Okay.
underfunded. Um, so if I had to do it again, I would say that's probably what I would try. I would try and maybe bring in equity partners or just be a little bit more prepared to start a new business. But then the flip side of that is being underprepared and learning those hard lessons early on. I feel we're integral into like who we are today. We literally had to scrap it together and make it work. So
Right.
I don't know. Maybe that's what made us who we are today. Is that we literally started with nothing and had to figure out how to make it work. If we
School of
had
Hard Knocks.
pretty much, if like
Yeah.
we had some angel investor that gave us $1 million and was like, here, buy what you need, do what you need to do to open.
Right.
I don't know if we'd be the same people we are today.
Right.
Like it's kind of trial by fire situation, right?
Right. Yeah. Right into the lines then,
Yeah.
for sure.
I
Um.
like to, I try not to play Monday morning quarterback. There's always something you could have
I
done
hear you.
differently. And I feel like everything is kind of a lesson, and you learn from it, move on. But I usually don't like to like look back and perseverate and say like, oh, we should have done this differently. I feel like that's very detrimental you know, in business and personal as well. You know, everything's a learning experience. You look at what you did. If it worked, it worked. If it didn't, it didn't. You move on. You know, and try not to second guess yourself. That's, you know,
Right.
there are times when I kind of dip into that for a minute and I have to get it out of my head because that's all I'll focus on.
Gotcha. And how do you define success?
For me, success is, you know, walking into the brewery and seeing my customers and my employees happy. You know, that's successful for me. You know, when I can create a positive experience for our customers in the tap room and a positive and fun working environment for the staff. You know, we're a big family here. You know, we support 10 families with our business, you know, and to see everybody doing well and, and striving for their best and succeeding and when they're happy at work, that's I feel like I'm successful,
That's great.
you know.
And is there a moment that kind of
Yeah.
sticks out for you?
I mean, we make beer for a living.
Yeah.
That's like the
What's
best
better than
job,
that?
right?
Nothing.
Yeah. Nothing I've ever done, you know, it beats swinging a hammer. I'll tell you
Yeah.
that.
No, that beats up your body after a while. I'm sure. I know brewing is not the easy thing, but
Yeah.
construction's a little worse on the knees, I feel like.
Yeah. Yeah.
I know. I
The,
did I
the
did it for
payoff in the day is,
yeah, I did it for 12 years prior to getting to the FDY, so I know firsthand, and it's brutal. It's brutal. Um, and I'm sure you come across a lot of people in the brewing industry. Is who do you think's inspired you the most?
um, I definitely have like my short list of people who have inspired and also helped us along the way. Actually, today, there's we're doing a collab with Common
Okay.
Roots. They're outside of
All right.
Saratoga. Those guys are great friends, super helpful, knowledgeable, and you know they're an inspiration to us. A few years back, their whole facility burned down, and they kind of like rose from the ashes and became this bigger, better company from it.
Yes.
So you know those guys are definitely an inspiration. They're great friends of ours from the beginning, and I'm happy they're here today. We're brewing a beer that we originally brewed about 4 years ago, back in 2018.
Nice.
So we're excited about that. And then you know, there's like those old school guys that from the beginning when we were like, yeah, we're gonna do this, that were, you know, very encouraging and very helpful. One of those guys is Steve Pominski from Barrage. You know, like when we were first opening up,
Yeah.
he was kind of like a salty old dog, you know, who would kind of try and steer us in the right direction, and keep us out of trouble, and keep us from making stupid
Right.
mistakes. Um, you know, like Greg Maish from Great South Bay. You know, he's another West Islip guy,
Okay.
but is, you know, significantly younger than me, but has significantly more brewing knowledge than I do, and he was super helpful. You know, from day one in you know, planning to even, you know, he would come here after work and help us like put shit together. You know, he's just another one of those like really solid guys. We're lucky to have a lot of great relationships in this industry. You know, um, I mean, there's probably 100 people I can name. You know, but right at the top, like those two in the beginning were the most helpful to us.
Right.
Um, Another guy like Mike from Port Jeff Brewing, he was another guy that was very helpful. You know,
Right.
day one, before day one,
I think
and we're lucky. You know, it's one of those industries where 99% of the people are there to help you. You know, in any situation. You know,
yeah. I
so
feel
it's
like a lot of brewers or just guys in the brewing industry are just very they want to help. It's like almost like when you're like in the fast, for instance, when I'm working on something and there'll be nobody in that room, and the moment I start like using a tool or something, it's just like everybody starts coming. What are you doing? What are you doing over here? You need help? It's just like
yeah,
it's like the curiosity.
and you know it's like, you know, how many ways are there to skin a cat? You know, everybody, you know, can get to that common goal. And they're people do things in just different ways that you find interesting. There's always room for improvement. There's always room to learn a different technique, or just even a better way to hook up a hose or something.
Right. Yeah.
There's such a great knowledge base out there, and everyone's always pumped to share a cool new thing they did with you, or you want to share with them. What you're up to. Um, so that's another one of those things that really makes this like one of the best industries out there.
Sure. And I'm sure, owning pretty much any business, including a brewery, can get stressful at times. How important is a mental break for you, and what does that look like?
Yeah, I mean that's something that I work on constantly. It's super tough to separate work and your personal life, and I don't know if that's ever 100% possible. You know, at least for me, but that's the kind of personality I have. I'm an Italian, and I'm like very passionate about everything, and I'm kind of a perfectionist. So that's probably a character flaw more than a character trait.
No, it's all
It's
good.
just who I am, and that's kind of the way I just
Right.
live my life. I also I work with my wife. My wife is kind of like my right hand in the company at this point. So it is very hard to separate work from personal life and kind of have those mental breaks. Um, and for me, that could just be like honestly, the best mental break sometimes is even if I'm like just finishing working in the office or in the brewery and just like walking into the tap room and sitting down and having a beer with a customer. Like I know I'm still at work and I know it's about work, but like just sitting down and enjoying like that product that all these people just broke their ass to make, and sitting down with a customer and we're both enjoying it and just having a normal conversation, like those are nice moments of
Right.
tranquility for me.
Beautiful thing.
Um, yeah, and then this summer we were lucky that we took a family trip to Italy. That's been on hold for a few years for obvious
Nice.
reasons,
Whereabout?
and we were everywhere in Italy. Rome,
Awesome.
Tuscany. Just it was a nice long trip, and it was one of the first times in about 8 years or 10 years that like there were many moments where I disconnected, didn't even think about work for a minute.
Perfect.
We at this stage in the game, we have a great staff and a reliable, responsible staff.
Right.
And there are those moments that creeps into the back of your head, like, oh my god, what's going on? 9 hours away, but I was able to finally disconnect, a little bit for the first time in like a decade. So
Awesome.
it was good, and then you get right back into it, and kind of forget about those peaceful moments because you're back in the chaos.
Right.
But that's I strive and I live in the chaos every day. I don't know what I would do. Usually on vacation, I'm that guy that's like, if I'm sitting on the beach, I last 10 minutes and I'm like getting antsy and shaking. Like, all right, what are we doing? What are we doing?
Life of an entrepreneur, man.
I don't take rest and relaxation well.
Were you able to find any breweries in Italy?
They were few and far between. We were in Tuscany and Chianti, and we were in wine country, so I was
Right.
kind of on a wine kick when I was there, and I definitely was seeking out breweries. They were harder to find than I anticipated.
Yeah.
And when I did I found a couple, and it was just like a totally different experience than I would say an American craft beer experience. It's a tiny little tasting area. It wasn't the two places that I found weren't like places you would just like go and hang out and drink beers.
Gotcha.
I found a bunch of great craft beer bars, but not really like that brewery experience I think that we're used to here.
Right. Completely different, I'm sure. Um, and what do you think's been the biggest change in the industry in the last 5 years?
Biggest change, I mean, in the last 5 years, there have been so many different things between, obviously COVID,
Right.
right? Um, I mean, that was a huge kind of blip on the radar, right? I mean, at that point, anyone who owned a brewery had to go to basically canning everything they brewed.
Right.
Um, so I mean, that's the first thing that jumps out is, coming out of this the dark ages of COVID is every single brewery pretty much cans their beer and like distributes that beer nowadays. You could walk into any beer distributor and the craft beer section is 10 times bigger than it used to be.
Yeah.
And you'll obviously have all local stuff, most New York stuff, but then you're starting to see some West Coast breweries that you would never think would be distributed on the East Coast popping up.
Right.
So that's definitely something that we've seen, in the last couple of years. Is in terms for us, we're a medium sized brewery that packages, pretty much everything we brew. Is the kind of the shelf space becoming increasingly more crowded. So we just recently opened up a second location in upstate New York in Warwick in the Hudson Valley. And we kind of looked at that scenario and we're like, all right, maybe let's pull back a little bit on how much we're canning, put more into kegs, and for us expanding our footprint into on-premise accounts, bars and restaurants, and then also diverting some more product to our new location, on tap.
Right.
Um, you know, Everyone loves all this access to all these new brands that are coming out, new styles that are coming out. But for us, I feel like everything's getting a little saturated, and we feel like it's in our best interest to pull back a little bit on what we're putting out there. It doesn't do anybody good. Like if we just keep firing cases off at these beer distributors, and they're sitting on a shelf because there's literally 1,000 other options.
Yeah.
I'd like to
For
keep
sure.
it a little bit more limited, and like just put out a small amount of great product and just keep pumping out large amounts. Yeah, we still believe in that our product is the best out there, obviously, but like just keeping it at a manageable level for everybody from the consumer down. Even for our tap rooms. Keep it manageable, keep it rotating and fresh. So that's kind of what I've seen in the industry the past couple of years is just everyone was at this like freight train forward, just keep pumping beer out and keep selling it. And like for us, I think pumping the brakes a little and keeping the product rotating and fresh and more in our control has been, where we are and where we're going to keep going right now.
Sounds good. Sounds good. I mean, I prior to talking about like pumping out cans, and I mean prior to COVID, um, I think the first time I heard about your brewery was from Pete, and he had this place called Homebrew and Hand Grenades.
Yeah,
I don't know
yeah.
if you know who that is.
It's
He works
At NASA, right? Oceanside or something, or
yes, yes,
or
and it's Baldwin. Actually, I
yeah,
think it's
Baldwin,
Baldwin.
Baldwin.
Yeah, but he was like, yeah, he's like, you got to check that place out. I was like, all right, and I came out there. I was like, wow, he's right. He said one of the best on Long Island. I was like, okay, I'll check it out.
I appreciate the
Um,
compliment.
so yeah, that was phenomenal. Um, and you homebrewed for a long time. If you had to pass on one homebrew tip to homebrewers, what would it be?
Kind of cut my teeth on learning how to brew traditional styles of beer. Like the obvious thing is that if you want to jump into brewing beer, like you just want to brew a crazy IPA or something, something that you tried out at a brewery or at a bar. But I think it's really important um, to know the traditional styles and to learn how to brew them. Anyone can make wort and throw in 10 pounds of hops or something. But and maybe I'm just an old school guy, but I think it's important to know
The
and
basics.
the basics
Yeah.
know what a traditional style like a Belgian ale or an English bitter or something like that. Know what it's supposed to taste like, and then try brewing that. It's
Right.
they're they're traditional beers for a reason. They've been around forever for a reason. And I think that's super important. I think we're in a space now where craft beer is kind of shifting back towards that. When we opened up, I think maybe our first 5 or 10 beers, we had Belgians on there. We had an English special bitter on there. Obviously we had an IPA. It was a very different IPA than what we were drinking today. But there were, the majority of the beers we were putting out in 2015 were traditional styles. And then we,
Right.
we kind of nailed down the basics and then started, kind of fucking around.
Right.
So that
Gotcha.
that would be my advice to anybody that like really wants to get into home brewing or just brewing in general. Like, go out there, drink yourself through like a lot of these traditional older styles. Know what beer where it came from. You got one of those like cliches. You gotta know where you came from to know where you're going, right?
Right.
I think that's super important.
Master your 101 classes.
Yeah, exactly.
Uh,
Don't just jump into
uh,
triple IPA. You know.
yeah, right. And I know you're open for about 8 years now.
Yep.
Is that right? Okay. And you just opened up and you opened up out in Warwick. Congratulations on that.
Thank
But
you.
what do you think the future looks like for Devco?
Um, I would say like the next 10 years, my little my project. I would say it's way more than just a project, but like for us going forward, our focus is sustainability. We've seen a lot. Especially going through COVID and coming out of it. These crazy inflation, supply chain issues. So sustainability is kind of our long term goal. In Bayshore, we rent our location. It's a lease on a building. In our Warwick location, we own that property. It's a
Right.
50-acre farm. So, we can invest a lot more time, energy, and money into making that what we want as our forever home, And that entails, we build out our new production space there. It's trying to make, a green building, utilize solar power and water reclamation technologies. And, we're growing our own grain up there. So just, kind of mitigating as many outside factors as we can, right? That's been a challenge. And I don't know what the future holds, but I just know that the past few years there have been so many challenges, and they're outside factors that you have no control over. So taking control over as many of those factors as we can over the next 10 years, hopefully, is kind of our goal right now.
Yeah. Well, being able to grow your own grain is a huge one, man.
Yeah, I mean
Cuts out.
it's something that I wouldn't say a few years ago I would have even considered, but it's we found this property. We weren't necessarily looking for a farm for our next location. I was looking for something that I can own, a building, or just um, especially in Warwick. We wanted to be in Warwick. My wife's family's in Warwick. Um, but
Nice.
once we found this farm, we kind of looked at it through different eyes, right? We have this amazing culture of farm, this farm culture, and this opportunity to kind of shift the business in that direction, right? Like we source all these ingredients from all over the country, all over the world. Like how can we like kind of reduce our impact and reduce these supply chain issues and reduce all these outside factors that are just like killing every small business right now, right? And
Right. Yeah.
it was one of those things where when we first saw the property, my wife's like, "Well, what the hell are we going to do with a 50-acre farm?" And I was like, "What are we not going to do with it? What are we not going to do with this? We could
Right.
do pretty much anything here, So
For sure.
And I think that kind of was like the mentality that I had coming out of COVID. You know, like we got shut down for however long, and then we're allowed to open, but you can only be outside, and you had to be sitting down, and like it was ridiculous, right? You know, so I'm like,
Yeah.
fuck it, we're buying this huge farm, and everyone could just spread out and do what they want, and
Right.
so
Sounds like a great
yeah,
idea to me. I mean, that I like you said with this whole supply chain thing. I think that's a phenomenal idea because who knows where this all
yeah.
goes.
And it's a fun project, side project, like now I'm playing
Yeah.
farmer, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's awesome. That's cool. I love it. I'm an outdoors, very hands-on person, so I love it as well. And if somebody was opening up their own place, what advice would you give them? It's happening all the time.
Yeah, be prepared to give up the rest of your life for this business. It's all consuming, like once again, I'm one of those people that are just like, whatever I do, I'm all in. That's just who I am.
Right.
And to be in this business, to open a brewery, that's who you have to be. It's all consuming. It's all the time. There are no set hours. It's hard on your family. It's hard
Right.
on your friends. It's hard on your body. It's hard on your bank account. It's hard on your mental state. It's not for the faint of heart. It's an all consuming kind of situation.
Understood.
Yeah.
And did you happen to have a funny story for us?
I it, when you asked me before we started the podcast, I was thinking about something, and it came up. It came up the other day, and this goes back a bunch of years when I was still probably working construction, working the brewery and bartending. Back in the early days, I wore every hat. Like we all tend to do. And even to this day, you have people that come into the tap room and they'll ask a bartender, like, there's a huge list of beers that we make that are on tap. And you'll still get customers that ask, like, oh, what kind of beer do you have? Or what's like a Bud Light? Or like, what's like a Stella? Or.
Right.
So we're all used to that. And there was this one time, like a bachelor party came in and I was bartending. It was a busy Saturday, so I was already like in the weeds, and I was kind of pissed that this bachelor party came in, and it's a bunch of bros, like half in the bag already, not knowing what they want, and they ordered like 10 flights, so I'm even more pissed now. And like the guy's father was with them, and their grandfather was with them, and I was getting pretty agitated, just trying to get them, to move on. And there's 20 people, 30 people online, they're holding up. And I fire off like 10 flights, and I'm like, all right. And the grandfather comes up, and, I gave these guys the whole spiel about, like, this is a brewery, this is our beer. If you don't know what you want, you could do a flight. And the guy's standing there listening to my whole spiel, and he comes up and he's like, I'll take a rum and Coke. And I was about to lose my mind. And I just started hysterically laughing. And, that made my day. Like, this old guy is along for this bachelor party, and these kids are just getting shit faced and they're bouncing around. And with just a straight face, the guy asked me for a rum and Coke. And honestly, it made my day. And I was like, you know what, man? I wish I could get you a rum and Coke right now. Just he was so adamant about it.
Yeah.
And I handed him like a lager or something. Like,
Yeah.
here's a Budweiser. Just like go away. But it was
Somebody
I don't know.
take Grandpa home.
Yeah, it was. I couldn't even get mad at him. It was just. I don't know. That one always gets me. I was so pissed at this bus that showed up with these drunk guys, and the grandfather asked for a rum and Coke. So
Good old Bob.
it's just
Never fails.
another day in life, right?
So I have a little segment, quick fire five quick questions, beer related. Ready?
Yep.
Uh, Somebody comes into your brewery. what beer do you recommend they try?
Right now, our layover lager. It's just super easy, clean drinking lager, and it's the direction I hope that all brewers continue to go in right now. Is just making good, clean styles. Brew me
Okay,
a lager, a pilsner with nothing to hide behind. Showing they know how to make beer.
agreed. Favorite brewery of their own?
Favorite brewery other than mine?
Yeah,
Local, international? I mean, that's a loaded question.
yeah. Let's go local, considering I live in the area.
All right. Let's see. I'm a huge fan of
Uh,
27A and what Ryan's doing over at Lindenhurst.
okay,
Another great brewer who started out and is still super small. And he's doing like nice, clean stuff and then fun experimental stuff. Another guy, Noble Savage, up in Glen Cove area. Frank is brewing some awesome beers out of there, and take a trip upstate. One of my favorite local breweries to me in Warwick is Rushing Duck. And
okay.
they're celebrating their 10th anniversary this week, and they're still killing it. They're still doing the Lord's work. They're brewing stuff they were brewing 10 years ago. They're doing fun new stuff, and
Awesome.
another great brewery by me is Drownlands. They're doing some really cool stuff. They're in Warwick as well.
I don't know if I've ever heard of them.
They're pretty popular right
Drama.
now. They're doing like a lot of wild stuff, foeder age beers, and I like those styles. They're doing IPAs and stuff like that too, but they're doing some nice like saisons and wild ales and foeder beers.
Awesome. And I'm gonna go with favorite style of beer.
Favorite style of beer. Uh,
Could be right now in the moment, or
right now, at the moment, it's summertime, so I'm crushing lagers. But uh, I usually, like I said, I tend towards like the Belgian beers, saison Dupont,
okay,
Belgian ale or Belgian double. It's my jam.
right, gotcha. Uh, t- 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 Favorite name you've come up with for your beers?
Our how many beers we have? We have over almost 400 beers, and most of them are ridiculous names. Um,
Yes.
I guess right now because it's on tap and it just came out, acai, what you did there. So it's an
I say what you
acai
did.
bowl inspired sour beer, and
Nice.
one of my buddies came up with that because we also have a beer called Berry Necessary, and he made a joke like Berry Necessary, acai, what you did there. So
Awesome.
my buddy came
I
up with the
like that.
name, and it's a fun one.
Very clever. And you have a keg of beer to hold you over for a 2 week quarantine. What beer are you choosing? Desert Island beer.
Tell you what, a keg for 2 weeks ain't making it, but uh, Dub Light or light lager. It's
All right.
easy drinking, low ABV. I could drink that for 2 weeks straight, no problem.
All right. Perfect. Chris, that's it. I got for you, man.
I really appreciate you having me on, and I'm glad we finally got this on the calendar and got it done.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's summertime's tough. I know everybody's busy,
That's
and
true. That's true. Thank
I
you,
got
man.
these animals here at Common Roots today, and we're gonna go get drunk now.
Yeah, going to that.
All
I'm
right.
Mike Curtin for the Brew World Order podcast here with Chris Candiano, co-owner of Destination Home Brewing Company in Bayshore. Thank you, brother.
Thanks, Mike. Have a good one.
You.